yes, by myself for the first time
Yes.
after escaping and succeeding.
Right.
It's very soft-spoken woman. Tells everyone to be quiet because I'm like, well, I can't do this. And she looks me dead in the eye and she's like, Lillia, one more push. And I'm like, I'm gonna write a book one day called One More Push. But sometimes you've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, not just physically, but through life.
Yes. Emotionally, mentally, physically, financially.
Those words, one more push, meant so much more because sometimes you got to push when you ain't got nothing left.
Welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe, where we pour positive back into your day, sharing stories from real people who have made it through some real struggles, but were able to restore their health, hope, and peace. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and as a certified coach, I'm here to guide you to be your best self-advocate, to help you restore your health, ignite your faith, and conquer those fears while you navigate your own healing journey so you can eventually exchange your dis-ease for durability. If you're looking for hope and encouragement to live a life you love, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and we are currently in the middle of a two-part series with my sweet friend, Lilla Sanders. And I want to just give you a quick context to where we're picking up from today. This whole conversation started when Lily and I were speaking last spring, and she mentioned that the next day was going to be her 5-year anniversary of being free. Not fully understanding all the details of that, I asked her what she was going to do to celebrate or somehow mark this momentous anniversary. She said she wasn't sure. So I said, I have a platform, and it is yours if you would like it. And she was so excited about the opportunity to stop and ponder and think about the things that she had made it through in order to not only celebrate her own bravery and courage, but even more so to make this story available to other people so she could help other people who might be in a similar situation. So today, we're going to pick up on the second part of this conversation. The entire conversation is a 2-hour, beautiful discussion. We're going to pick it up in the second half of this conversation, where Lillia had escaped this very dangerous situation from her husband, now her ex-husband, who had, over the course of time, developed some sort of schizophrenia. And it had really become quite dangerous for her 2 little girls and herself, who was pregnant with her 3rd child. And she's escaped the house and found some safety in her parents' place, but then for legal reasons had to return to the state where her husband was. So she is back and forth trying to maintain all of these pieces so she can establish a foundation for her new life, trying to build a business, maintain her clients, find a place to live, take care of her little ones, and prepare for her 3rd child to be born. This is quite a story, my friends, but it's so encouraging to hear the beautiful way that Lillia has created a new life for herself. And so let's dive in right at the point where Lillia is trying to establish her business, and she's doing a lot of flying back and forth between the northern states where her parents were and the southern states where her husband lived at the time. So let's jump back into the story, and we'll hear more about Lillia's escape from darkness into the light.
So I'm flying back and forth every 2 weeks, trying to have enough money, calling, trying to figure out a safe place for me and my kids to live. And because I was doing so many room rental for Airbnbs, I'm like, I could probably just rent out a room. There's no like legal stipulation with that. And there's no, rental history report or anything like that. So I had to get creative. So I found a nice Airbnb in a nice neighborhood. And I actually had booked a client, like more of a full-time client during that time, a daycare. They needed me to do payroll, monthly books, billing, invoicing, all of that. So I'm like, okay, cool. So during that time though, I called a place to get, to rent. And at the time, he's like, yes, it's available. I was like, do you need any kind of history, work history? He said, no, just come with your security deposit. So I booked this Airbnb for the whole house is just me and my kids for 2 days. And I'm supposed to move into this place with like nothing. Well, I call him and he's like, oh, I rented it out to somebody else. And I was like, what do you mean? This is the day I'm supposed to move out of my Airbnb. I'm like, I have nowhere to go. And I tell the lady from the Airbnb, I'm like, look, do you have an extra day that I could rent it out? She's like, actually, you could stay with me for a day and rent out a room if you want. She's like, the Airbnb is so hit or miss. I'll give you a room with the bathroom for you and your kids. So I ended up staying with her house, which she would Airbnb, young 20-year-old. She managed Airbnbs, ironically.
Yeah.
So now Airbnbs are fully furnished. I didn't have to buy dishes. I didn't have to buy a bed. I didn't have to buy sheets. They take care of everything. It's like a hotel, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to pay for the whole house anymore because now she was like, with your permission, I'd like to rent out the other 2 rooms since you can't afford the whole house. So I rented the room with her with my 2 little kids. And that was probably the first of many times where I was like, I'm homeless. I don't have a place to go. So yeah, it turns out though, my ex would terrorize me there at the Airbnb.
So he did find you.
Yeah, he started terrorizing the people who were renting from there and all of this stuff. So then I had to get the police involved again. And now I'm like, wow, I can't even get a break. So I'm building a business. I have a brand new client and I'm about to give birth. It was interesting because it turned out to be a long-term rental. And so the good thing was there was some stability as far as who we were around. But yeah, I gave birth while living at an Airbnb, renting a room. That was the whole thing. So
wait, at the Airbnb or at the hospital?
No.
Okay.
At the hospital while staying at an Airbnb.
Got it.
That was a whole thing too, because I'd never given birth by myself. And I remember being like, I don't want to do this by myself. So I was like, well, he is the dad and he would like terrorize me still, harass me. That's my kids. I should be there. I was being induced because I was high risk. And so I was like, I'm giving birth on this date. Then he was acting crazy and showing up. And I was like, I told my doctor, I was like, I think I need to change it. And she was really kind. She was like, okay, if you want him there, that's up to you. And the minute I said, no, I'm changing it, really last minute, she was like, good. She put me under an alias. We changed the date. He didn't know when I was going to give birth. And she put me under an alias and I was flagged in the hospital. So if he happened to find out, they would alert everybody. Lisa, I'm so grateful for her. To give birth in fear is, especially when you try so hard to reproduce. But
yeah, we haven't even gotten into that part of your story.
I know.
You have because how long were you married before your first child was born?
I was married 5 years.
Okay, married 5 years, and you went through a lot of fertility issues.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can touch on that later. I don't want to derail your story, but you are giving birth now for the 3rd time, high risk, in fear, under an alias at the hospital. Okay.
And yeah, we changed the date. So what happened was he showed up at my Airbnb, started terrorizing the guy who was renting. You're sleeping with my wife and call the police. There's this guy at an Airbnb. He's molesting my kids and like just making up And I started having all these false contractions and they were like, yeah, we need to shut this down. So actually a family from my church let me stay with them the night before I gave birth just so I could have some peace. But yeah, I had to do a restraining order, but the police really did help me out. The Austin police, they really did. They put things in place to where he can't show up, he can't come on the property, all of this. Now it's already August, the month that my daughter's supposed to be born. Days before I'm supposed to give birth, he's harassing me and the people at the Airbnb to where the police have to be called. Now I got to pivot. I end up giving birth earlier. We have to bump it up. And so I'm there and I'm scared. Family friend's wife actually offered to sit and hold my hand. Didn't even know her. But yeah, so that day I go in and I'm like, I want to cut my umbilical cord. Like, I want to participate. And so something profound happened. So I'm under a lot of stress and I labored and labored and labored and labored. And it's early and I'm being induced. So my body's forcing the baby out and my oxygen's dropping, the baby's oxygen's dropping. Hours go by, 12, 13, 14 hours. And I was doing it naturally.
So,
Which,
okay. My goodness.
which apparently isn't that common because a lot of people on the floor was like, I want to see this. You're going to not get any medicine.
So
So
you didn't have a block or anything for the pain?
no, nothing.
Girl.
And it honestly ties to my stillborn experience. Honestly, like, which we had talked about, and that's, like you said, a whole nother conversation. I had an epidural then, and for me, I wanted to feel and experience everything of a live birth.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
The beauty of what our bodies could do. I
Yeah.
mean, minus the
Because you had one other
Pitocin. I said penicillin.
Pitocin. Yeah. Okay, got
and
it.
natural.
Yeah. So you did have one birth before that you had the epidural, but it was ended up being stillborn?
Correct.
Okay.
So I had a stillborn before having successful pregnancies. And like I said, I think that's what really triggered my ex to really spiral.
But
And
that also
so,
explains why you wanted to have no drugs on this one. You wanted to just
yes,
be able to feel baby the whole time.
yes. All 3 pregnancies. This is my 3rd one doing it all natural. But at that hospital, they were like, we got to see this.
Oh.
So I kid you not, I have my family friend's wife holding my hand. And there's like people all around me. It was like the coolest thing to them that I was about to push out a baby naturally. And I turned to her. And at that time, Lisa, I was so tired. And I remember being like, I don't want to do this natural anymore. I have nothing to prove. Like, I just want an epidural. I'm tired of being strong, is what I told her. I'm like,
Oh.
that's okay. Do whatever you want. You've been strong so far. Do whatever you want. And I'm like, okay, I will get an epidural. And my doctor was like, when they ask for an epidural, that's when it's time to push. And so they're like, okay, let's call the doctor. And that's what they told me she said. So mind you, I'm like in all its pain. They had me on oxygen, all this stuff. So I'm pushing the baby out. And I have all these people around me like, yeah, you can do it. Because they've never seen anyone give birth.
Like
right?
a cheerleading team.
Literally, it was so loud in there. She tells everyone to be quiet. And I'm trying to push the baby out. And at this time, I'm like, I can't. I'm just so tired. After all I'd been through all those months.
Yes.
It was a rebirth, kind of like today, I feel like.
Yeah,
so
your child was being born, but so were you.
Yes.
It was like a double birth.
Yes. By myself for the first time after escaping and succeeding.
Right.
Yeah. So my doctor quiets everyone. And it's a very soft-spoken woman. Tells everyone to be quiet. Because I'm like, well, I can't do this. I can't push. And they're like, you got to push, you know. And she looks me dead in the eye and she's like, Lillia, one more push. And I'm like, I'm going to write a book one day called One More Push. But sometimes you've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, not just physically, but through life.
Yes. Emotionally, mentally, physically, financially.
Those words, one more push, meant so much more because sometimes you got to push and you ain't got nothing left. And her one more push, I had nothing left. But that day was me being tired of pushing. But sometimes when you're tired, you have to give one more push to get to the other side.
One more.
One more push. Those words meant a combination of all the things from 3/29/2019 to that moment, Lisa.
Yeah. It was so much more than giving
So much
life
more.
to that baby. It was
By myself. I made it that far,
yes.
but I still got to go one more.
Just one more push.
Woo!
Yeah. I know.
It
Wow.
meant so much. And yeah, she came on out. I cut the bit. I didn't need anyone to cut it. I cut it myself. So even that cutting, just being able to cut something off of you that you've been curing since 3/29/2019. Yeah. And she was a miracle baby. And so to birth something, to get access to something you've been fighting for months.
Well, really years. Given your story. Yeah.
Yes. But for her, she really was my motivation to wear it no more.
Right.
I'm not birthing her into chaos.
Right. Yeah. She was the ignition
Yes.
that got you
Even
out of that situation.
Yes, even being on the mattress, knowing that we're gonna die, we could possibly die together. And now we're being rebirthed, as you say, a double rebirth together.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
cool is that?
That is so beautiful.
One more push got me to the other side, got
Yeah.
me to cut it off. Now I could hold her and enjoy her in peace.
Yes. Yes.
My first birth that I could have in peace.
Yeah. And
Such a
and
beautiful thing.
her whole life that you get to have in peace and know that all 3 babies and your own heart would be safe and secure for a beautiful future.
I write down every day what I'm thankful for, and the top is rest and peace
Mm,
because now I get to sleep.
yeah.
I went a long time, even before getting pregnant with my first, who's almost 8 now, without being able to sleep. Because ever since the stillborn, which was a few years before hers, is when he started to turn addiction and hallucinate and just do stuff. It wasn't to that degree, but
Okay.
I would still not get a lot of sleep. Um, he terrorized me during my first successful pregnancy. I remember being like, God, this cannot be true. After
Mm,
all these child losses, my first successful one, and I got to protect. I had a car at that time. I had family around me. I wasn't as isolated, but
yeah.
I was still secretly suffering through this man accusing me of stuff. He
Right.
got a blood test to make sure the baby was his, like all
Um,
kinds of stuff. My
wow.
husband, at that time, my one and only, the only person I'd ever been with, is accusing me on my sixth and first successful pregnancy. So
Wow.
could you imagine to have my third with peace,
Yes.
not being woken up, not being accused, that noise was removed. I
Yeah.
am so grateful every day for rest and peace. And then
Oh
the
my.
second thing is obviously my beautiful girls that God promised me. He promised me better. And now I have a beautiful business, beautiful kids, peace, joy, a beautiful relationship, a healthy one.
Oh,
And money, I get to
yeah.
manage millions. I
Yeah.
do really well. I manage really high-end successful businesses now, and I get to honor their books and point out anything that might be discrepancy. This is where all things work together
Mm,
for our good to those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. So
mm.
yes, 5 years ago today
Wow.
brought me to where I am now. And I appreciate you letting me reflect and yeah, talk about my story.
Oh, my dear friend, you have been on a journey. God has pulled you through, carried you through, picked you up, and brought you across that one last push.
One last
Uh,
push.
one more push. He has brought you through so much, and I'm so grateful that, like, I marvel. I just marvel at how you've been able to maintain your joy, how you've been able to look at that beautiful smile.
Thank you.
Maintain your joy and maintain your faith and your commitment to God through such hard times. I know in some respects it's because it was all you had to cling to,
Literally, yes.
and he didn't fail you. You know, he was faithful.
I mean, the things where always you cannot make this stuff up. Me finding my first apartment, me booking $1 million clients for massive merger and acquisitions, like me getting a car, like God has come through for me. Like you said, that's all I had. When you don't have a lot of money and things like that, God will send you people. God will send you resources. God will send you protection, a Lyft driver, a hotel manager, a doctor. Like he literally has come through for me. And the joy of the Lord is definitely my strength.
Absolutely.
Like I
Yeah.
could not, he gets all the glory. I could not have made it this far without him. And
Yeah.
I'm just so, and my dad's generally a happy person. I give him credit. Like, we could call him crying. He has 3 girls and a boy, but very, girls are girls.
Yeah.
He could be going through a lot and he's just always smiling. And that was really modeled for me. But there is a God factor in it all for sure. Just knowing that God is still winning,
Mhm. Yeah.
he's still winning. He's still on the throne.
He's still on the throne.
Mhm.
You know, when you were talking about those things, it dawned on me that God does that to almost all of us.
Mhm.
But when you're affluent or when you've got things, when you got your needs met, you
Mm,
don't give God the credit for
mm,
helping you get that car, or helping you get that home, or
mm,
helping you get that relationship because you think it's all you. Oh, I did it all myself.
mhm.
When you really have to get to the end of yourself
You're right.
when you start realizing it's not me. I didn't do it. God made those opportunities, presented those opportunities to me. He presented those people into my life, and it wasn't me. I was relying on God. Yeah, and you were relying on God. I love that. I mean, it's just you are a you are an incredible soul, and I know
Thank
your
you.
story is going to affect so many people.
I hope so.
And
I do want to say too, and I can't stress enough, and I don't know if we talked about this during our last conversation. You have to trust God, but you have to do something.
yes, God can't steer a bus that's sitting still, as one of my friends told
Exactly.
me.
I love that. And for me, I couldn't stay there. I kept praying, but when I knew God was telling me to leave and he
Yes,
confirmed it again and again,
right.
I questioned God at first. God, you don't want me to leave and get a divorce. God, that's not God. That's not what I know. But sometimes it's not that simple. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And it
yeah,
doesn't always make sense.
yeah,
But you can't, I think I had shared this with you. You can't eat the same things and pray over your food and hope not to have diabetes and pray that the sugar doesn't affect your body. Like you have to do things to get a
right,
different result. And
right.
so for me, or anyone struggling, whether it's financially, even in their own like simple things with their health or whatever, you have to do things
Yeah,
in order to get a different result. You trust God, but you also have to use wisdom
yeah,
and skill and use resources. Like
yes,
it took a team of strangers for me, but in trusting God, I was still acting.
yeah,
You know, faith without works is dead. And so you have to have faith in what God is telling you, but you also have to move
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
You have to
It's
take
not like,
action, right?
yeah.
So
Some
true.
people, I had to, in a sense, rescue myself. I did.
Yeah,
God wasn't going to physically take me out of it. I
right.
had to do
You
something
had to stand up and
here.
walk out.
Yes.
Mhm. So true. Now he put the pieces in place to make that possible. He put the pieces in place to make it successful, but
Right.
you had to stand up and walk out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so true.
It wasn't like, oh, I did it. It was not, no, it was terrifying,
Yeah.
especially with little kids.
Oh, for
The
sure.
biggest fear were my kids. It was like, am I doing the right things for them? It's weird because it was like two-sided, like, am I being irresponsible? Like,
Mhm.
walking out with no means, or
Right.
am I doing the right thing on by faith?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I
Yeah,
had to trust God. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
I am curious, because you were married for about 5 years, you said, before baby number 1,
Mhm.
successful baby number 1, because you had how many babies had you lost in the process of
I
tr
had 4 miscarriages and a stillborn, all
Oh,
before the age of 30. So from
oh,
25 to 29, 25 when I was 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29.
oh
Yeah.
my
Literally
goodness.
all, and they said I couldn't conceive, and that's where the fasting came in and all of that. But yes,
Okay,
5 child losses
yeah.
before.
So you used fasting as a way to heal your body,
Correct.
and the fasting gave your body the chance to heal what it needed to in order so you could have a successful pregnancy. Is that summarizing it correctly?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Fasting, plant-based whole food, Daniel fasting was a big part of it too.
Yep.
Letting my body heal itself after being told I couldn't reproduce.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was me also taking action
That's right.
to get a different result. So yeah, massive fibroids, and fasting, like we like to talk about, helped heal. God knows what he's doing, and he calls fasting for a reason. And so yeah, that led me to my first successful pregnancy at 32.
My
Mhm.
goodness. Wow. So when was the first time you've noticed, did it take you the whole 5 years and up to the stillborn before your husband started showing signs that things weren't quite right in his mind? Like, when did you first notice he was not chemically right?
Um, I think I didn't, because I wasn't exposed to drugs and alcohol and that kind of thing. I
Mhm.
really don't know. I do know the drinking started to increase when I was carrying the baby who was stillborn, because she had uh, deform deformalities,
Okay.
abnormalities. And so I remember, okay, he doesn't usually drink this much, but he is now. Um, but it wasn't as aggressive.
Okay.
After she was born is where it got really, really bad. So
Okay.
I would say prior to that, which was like 3 or 4 years into our marriage, it was pretty normal to me. I didn't notice anything. I didn't know what to look for, honestly.
Sure. But I
But
mean, he
yeah, I didn't
wasn't
really.
tracking you and he wasn't boarding
I
up the
know.
windows and
No, he wasn't boarding up the windows. I don't know. He might have been tracking me and I just didn't know.
okay.
But everything was extremely subtle. It
Mhm.
wasn't an overnight because we were like, why would you marry somebody like that?
Right.
No, it was extremely subtle.
Right.
So he might have subtly been that way and it just grew. And then with trauma, I know trauma could trigger a lot of things.
Yes.
Then he couldn't hide it anymore. Does that make sense?
Totally.
I can't speak for him, but I do know it was extremely subtle.
Okay.
Because at first it was like, I will board up the windows because, I don't want anyone looking in here. Okay. You know what I'm saying?
There is a logical element to it, but that's actually what I wanted to get to because I think a lot of people who are in situations similar to this, they don't know the signs to recognize because it is so subtle.
It's extremely
And
subtle.
it
And you
is
know the person before. That's another thing with the psychology. Well, they're not normally like that. And for me, the biggest thing was he's hurting. He's going to go back to normal. This isn't all, it's just a phase. Lord, please help him. Like, this is, okay, this is worse. I'm in survival mode. And if you don't talk about it, you don't really see it.
Right.
And they will talk you out of it. They'll make you think you're crazy. They'll make you think it's not really what it is. They'll manipulate you to where they'll make you think you're crazy. When you do notice and you call it out, they'll make you think you're crazy. And then it's like, wait, I wasn't crazy the whole time. Wait, when did it? Because it wasn't until I left that I would kind of sit and be like, when he used to say that when he was sober, like, oh, that friend isn't really your friend. Was that him being smart and, discerning? Or was that him slowly but surely isolating me? And some of
yes.
that happened before the drinking. I read a book called Hidden Abuse by a Christian author. Look it up. I don't remember her name.
Sure.
But it was talking about subtle abuse in church and in lives and stuff like that, workplace with parents. But a lot of things are subtle and hidden, and then you hide it because they make you think you're not all there. If you question anything too, sometimes men are where it's like, don't question me.
Right.
I'm the man, I'm the leader, da 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 da. And he used to try to spin it on me like I'm trying to question him and I wasn't seeing things, but I really can't say. I just know the alcohol and stuff happened more aggressively after the stillborn. And he started to hallucinate more and just say something that didn't make sense and be a little bit more controlling. But it still didn't happen overnight. That wasn't the man I married. It happened very subtly.
Yeah. Well, alcohol is a chemical. Drugs are a chemical. And they actually make permanent changes in our brain. And if you think about our brains, are chemical reactions that are happening, that are driven by hormones, that are driven by, the energy around us, that are driven by the toxins. And it, if you can think about like an animal that gets rabies, the reason that they go wacko is a chemical change in their brain. So it makes sense that why couldn't the same kind of thing happen to people? Of course it does. It happens all the time. So the reason I bring that up is it's not your fault for marrying the wrong person. It's not that you should have known better. No.
It's easy to feel that way.
Yeah. His brain changed from wedding day and previous to abuse day and forward. Something chemically changed. And it's hard in those situations because it actually, as angry as I am for all the things he did to you, I also have a part of me that feels sorry for him in the chemical change that's happening in his brain, that he really needs help. And I think we just do a disservice to a lot of those people when we just leave them out on the street, and they're just prone to affect more people in a negative way. They're not getting help that way. It's just propelling the sickness.
So he started having open hallucinations. This is after I left. And so one day I was walking out of church, and this is tied to what you're saying as far as leaving them.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving from church and the police call me and they're like, hi, may I speak to Lillia? And they're like, we have your husband here and he says that you're locked in a box. And I'm like, we're at a U-Haul station and he says that he could hear you and your girls. And I was like, no, I just walked out of church. I said, look, he has mental issues. Can you guys please help him? And the guy, I think my ex is standing there. So he was talking very, I could tell he was trying to keep it. thank you, ma'am, for that information. We will call you back.
Hmm.
And so, long story short, yeah, full on hallucination. They had to call the police on him because he was convinced that me and the girls were locked in. Somebody was loading their stuff at the U-Haul, and he was like harassing them because he heard us in there. Like, yes, a whole thing. But they let him go. And I'm like, yes. At first, he refused to leave because he was convinced we were there. When he finally left, the police got him off the property. He called again and about me. Oh, I'm in danger, blah, blah, blah. Can they do a wellness check at the Airbnb? Because he's not allowed there anymore. So I'm like, you guys, why didn't you guys institutionalize him or something?
Yeah.
They said unless he's at a harm to himself or others, they can't do anything.
Yeah.
So there's people out there who are not all the way there, can make a scene, could cause chaos. But unless they get physical, I was in so much psychological stuff with this man.
Yes.
And I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah. I was just going to say that. They need to redefine what doing harm is, because you can do a lot of trauma to someone without ever touching them.
The amount of therapy, like I said, I've had just because being woken up abruptly alone took years.
Yes.
I still get triggered. I have these really loud neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
I go into like survive, if I move, because I didn't know at any moment, I knew he could be out of his mind and possibly hurt me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or himself or the kids.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
he was completely unpredictable.
But a lot of it was the illusions that he was living in, wanting me to see it, telling me I was a part of it. Yeah. And there was nothing I couldn't call. Even when he called the police, the good thing is the police report said maybe he's struggling with schizophrenia. He's having hallucination. They did document it, but they're not doctors, so they can't
diagnose it.
Yes. They can just acknowledge, hey, this man isn't making sense right now, and it's like, you can arrest him, but, especially if he wasn't even drinking, there was nothing I could do about it. So yes, some of these people are left, a lot of them are left to just live their lives. He worked the job and everything.
Wow.
There's nothing they could do about it unless something happens, just like with abuse. Honestly, it's like, did he hurt you? Do you have proof? Do you have this? There's all these questions that come into place. And then it's like, well, if it's not blood and bruises,
physical, right?
Then it's like, okay, well, we could write it down. We could do the report, but we can't press charges unless something really bad happens to you.
Yeah. Which is crazy because, solitary confinement is considered a sort of torture. But there's no one's getting touched. So we consider that torture. And yet the kinds of things that man was doing to you was not considered bad enough to detain him. Yeah. That's really sad.
What you just said was really hit me, that solitary confinement is torture and they're not being touched.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I was in solitary confinement.
Yeah. You were more.
Well, it was a lot more than that.
You had a lot more than that. Yeah. I think that would have been a blessing if you had been just left alone in a box with your kids.
I would have been like, oh.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. And yet I'm so honored to be able to give you a place.
Thank you.
To celebrate all you've been through, to honor and glorify God for all that He's carried you through, to celebrate those 3 beautiful girls in your life that sustained you, that ignited your freedom, that gave you the motivation for one more push.
One more push.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. I really, really am grateful that you gave me the honor to let me hear your story. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me finally talk about it.
Yeah. 5 years.
Unashamed. Yes. Yeah. 5 years.
Not only unashamed, but proud of yourself is what you should be for all you made it through.
I am. I finally gotten to the point where it's like, okay, Lillia, you did nothing wrong.
Right. And you made it through and now you're making a difference in lives left and right. So
Thank
that's so
you.
amazing. Hey, on that note, if you could speak to somebody who maybe hears this, if you could speak to someone who's maybe at the front end of where you were, or maybe a year into it, is there anything that you could recommend, any tips or ideas that you'd recommend to them for? One of the things that came to mind, I'll share this, and then if anything comes to your mind, I thought, if there's a way that we could all just have an emergency plan where we have set up our
Mm.
people and our
Mm.
friends in other states, in other places, maybe who don't know our spouse, even if we trust our spouse and we're in a good place, but if we could just have our emergency plan and say, hey, if anything ever goes wrong, can I reach out to you? Could I call you for help? Would you be willing to be on my team? And I think if everybody kind of set up that kind of team, and if everybody set up the house is on fire, the 10 things I'm going to grab,
I love that.
you know? And whether the house is on fire or the spouse goes nutso
Mhm.
or, something
Mhm.
happens or the flood is coming or the tornado
Mhm.
is hitting,
Mhm.
what are the list of 10 things I need to grab to have my most important things? I think that preparation
Yes.
would empower us in so many ways. It doesn't always take care of the financial side. So the skill, like your doctor had
Mhm.
said, the skill you had really
Mhm.
equipped you. So that might be one thing for ladies out there and men, because, it's more rare, but there are women out there who are also abusive.
Oh, I feel like
Yeah,
that's coming more common, to be
I hear
honest.
you, right? Exactly. So for
Mhm.
men and women to have kind of a skill and something that they can do on their own or could spin up if, something, a plan. But anyway, if you could speak to that person, that younger Lilia who was in the midst of
Mhm.
that, is there any advice that you might give her to prepare?
I love your advice. So I did that once I left. That's what I did.
Okay.
I had keywords. Um, I will send this emoji if I can't. I was so scared of my life of him popping up at any moment
Yes.
and hurting me and
Yeah.
taking back his kids.
Right.
Um, because that was a big thing he tried to manipulate. But yes, I had people in state, out of state.
Mhm.
I have people who know my location at all times. Ironically, I want certain people to track me. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
It
Ironically,
totally
yes.
does. The
Because
right
like
people
that's the
to
right.
track
If
you.
anyone's gonna track me, it's
Yeah.
gonna be these people who will always know where I'm at all times.
Yeah.
I've talked and helped people who've been through situations like mine, one more recently. And I said, look, memorize some number. If you have to turn off your phone, you know it by heart. You could borrow a cell phone, call it.
Good
And
point.
and yes, yes. So for me, and then people who didn't really know my ex, like you said, people who were kind of totally outside of the bubble, and I feel like we all had people who love us, even though we don't talk. Like it could be decades. You kind of know it from Facebook. You've always had a bond, but
Mhm.
you don't really talk to them. But they, ironically, you don't know it will have your back.
Mhm.
But with the person that I was talking to, I said, look, memorize my address. If you think you're safe with not being tracked, memorize my phone number. What's the code word going to be? Even people who are depressed and going through things,
Yes.
because sometimes you're down. For me, I would have bouts of really sad moments. And I don't want to talk about it, but I need somebody praying for me, and I don't know what to say. And I might not even answer the phone when you call, but I'm having a moment. I am. And so little keywords so people know to check on you, know that you're not doing well. Because
Yeah.
for me, I don't like help. I've been doing that, I've been busting. I'm learning to accept help, but for me, it was hard to trust
Yeah.
on top of have help. But
Yes.
yeah, what you said, having the key people, having a plan, because sometimes it might not be a spouse, it might be a child who's on drugs, or, you
Yes.
don't feel safe from your son or your daughter, and you don't know how to help them.
Yeah.
If it gets to the point where your life is at stake, who are you going to call?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think having key people in place. I told people passwords. If anything happens to me, this
Right.
is where my client files are. Just like personal stuff.
Mhm.
People who are so far removed from my life, but that I love and can trust. I had that in place. I was so scared to die
Mm.
that I would have things in place to where if anything happens, this is how you access the passwords to my bank
Mm-hmm.
accounts and my client stuff. Because, and I used to say it to my clients, they're like, don't, I'm like, look, if I die, your stuff is good. There's so much, I was so in survival mode, knowing the reality of the what if. I'm a lot more free now, but I still feel like doing it in a sane environment, like what you said.
Yeah. Before you're
So
panicked
important.
and
Yes.
stressed. Yeah.
Apple has a panic button. I've dreamt of using it. So you press it 5 times and it'll alert people for emergencies.
Okay.
I have people on my emergency contact list to where, God forbid, I'm in a car accident with my kids and I can't speak, or I've had dreams of being choked to death, unfortunately. And I remember in the dream, I had a solution, though, ironically, psychologically, to where I could push the button. No police officers, no veterans, no people who can protect you, and learn how to protect yourselves.
Yeah.
I know people are for that, and take self-defense. Learn how to shoot if you have to. Arm yourself for situations like that. But for me, when I was isolated, all I had was stuff like this, things that I could listen to that gave me hope.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might not be able to reach out to people
Yeah.
because they're tracking your phone and watching your phone. So you can be like, hey, try to do phone conversations. But if you're being recorded like me, feed yourself with the resources so when you leave, you know how to use them.
Good idea.
That would be a good thing too. But you named some really great things. But I do know, like what you just said, the whole chemical balance, it could affect a child. Alzheimer's and dementias affect elder people, and they become verbally and physically abusive. Honestly, I've worked in the home health care. Those family members might need safe words if a loved one is attacking them because they don't remember who they are. There's so many layers to people being in situations like this. So having code words, code emojis, memorizing things if you're isolated or you get out and you don't know who to call. It's like, look, I need to memorize some numbers and know some addresses.
Yeah.
If there's a tornado, like you said, or if there's this, or, emergency plans. I love it.
And be prepared. On that same lines, with AI, artificial intelligence doing all that it's doing now, our family has developed passwords because AI can mimic voice and video now. And
I did see that. I did see something about that, which is scary.
Exactly. Yeah. So if someone calls me and sounds like my son and says they need money, I got a password now. And I could say, let's confirm you are who you are, which is just crazy that this world has gotten to that.
But I had to do that for banks. But I did see that AI can emulate and say it's an emergency. So having code words is everything. Even now to this day, any bank, if I ask for anything, they ask, I have code words in place. But to have that with your family, even clients, my clients might need code words. What is the code word on your account? So that I know AI isn't emailing me asking me for stuff.
So true. So true. Oh my goodness, my dear friend. You are amazing. You're absolutely inspiring and amazing. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for you. Is there anything else in closing that you wanted to say, or anything else on your heart that you want to share?
So I just want the person who just know that God loves you. And he's not going to be mad at you if you leave a very domestic and tumultuous.
Yeah, God doesn't want you there. No.
He doesn't. It took me a long time to understand that. But if abuse is going on, like sometimes you have to remove yourself so that they can get better. You cannot fix everybody.
Right.
But also those who don't think they have a skill, start praying about skills. If you're a single mom or if you're in a situation that you need to get out of, having a skill or a talent that you don't think people will pay for, you can do it and learn how to figure it out, and just know that you're strong enough. Acknowledge him in all of your ways and he'll direct your path. Even when you don't have the energy, there's been times where I'm like, all right, it's gone weeks where I haven't gotten up early because I got to get up extra early to pray. He's not mad at you. He still provides. I remember going through financial peace and being like, I don't have enough to tithe at this moment. All I can do, I was just scraping by.
Yeah.
And God will love you until you can. I just remember being like, God, when I can, I will. And I do. You know what I'm saying? So everything isn't so realistic when it comes to his grace and his mercy when you're trying to survive. I was so hard on myself. And I had to learn to give myself grace and a minute and time to heal and do things the best I can when I can. And if I can't, being okay with it.
Yeah.
But don't stop feeding yourself. Let the joy of the Lord be your strength. Pray about who to trust and who to allow to be in your life. I haven't been burned by anyone since then because I have to trust God. He helped me get out.
Yeah.
Trust him, acknowledge him, lean in on him, and focus on some tangible things that you can do. And if you don't know, feed your mind with people who think bigger and different from you. Listen to things that will challenge and stretch you. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it.
Love that. Thank you so very much. And it's Good Friday. What a good Friday
Thank you, Jesus.
to share your story. I'm
Yeah.
so proud of you. I wish this is one of those times I don't like Zoom because I want to reach over and hug you.
Oh.
But thank you. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Lillia has a beautiful story. It was a difficult story, absolutely devastating and dangerous, but she escaped out of the darkness into the light and is thriving. I just want to give you an update. I spoke to Lillia not too long ago. She is doing so well. Her business is thriving. Her 3 beautiful little girls are thriving. And she just recently got engaged to a God-fearing man who will love her and care for her exactly the way that God intended for her to be loved and cared for. So a beautiful ending to a difficult story. I do want to wrap up with a couple of quick things because as unique as this story might seem, sadly, it happens all too often. And I want to just remind you of all the different people that God brought into her circle to help her escape. First, it was just coordinating the circumstances so she could be alone at her OB/GYN doctor appointment. So thank you to the OB doctor who helped her have a space to be able to create an avenue to get free. Thank you also to the friend that Lillia had who advised her, just giving her some simple tips and advice to keep it simple, to not overplan it, to just make a path and get out. A huge thank you to Lillia's sister who picked up the big garbage bags full of clothes so Lillia would have some things for herself. A big thank you to the Lyft driver and to all of the Lyft drivers or Uber drivers who pick up people who are in desperate situations, for your peace, for your compassion, for the kindness and the strength that you show these people who are really depending on you. You are making a difference in their lives. So thank you, Lyft drivers, Uber drivers, taxi drivers, all of you who are making a difference in people's lives. I also want to say thank you to the hotel manager who went into full-on protection mode and made sure that Lillia was kept safe, that she was put in under an alias. That hotel manager stepped in to help protect Lillia. Then it was also the hospital and how they put her underneath an alias to be able to give birth to her 3rd child. And all the staff at the hospital who not only help Lillia, but think of the countless other people who are in really difficult and dangerous circumstances when they're at the hospital and they are protecting these people. These are things outside of their jobs that we so often overlook and don't even consider. The ways they're pouring into these people's lives that we don't even think about. And then there was the whole team of people that surrounded Lillia at the various Airbnbs that she went to, from the people who were renting them to her to the roommates who were in the rooms next door. And I want to make a huge thank you to all of the law enforcement officers out there who deal with people with schizophrenia and all kinds of chemical imbalances on a regular basis. They're the ones who are the first line of defense who come to these calls. They don't know who to believe. They don't know necessarily who to trust. And they are putting their own lives on the line to try to protect those who are at risk and those who are sick and need help. It took an absolute village, a community, a complete team effort to get Lillia out of this situation. And God helped to orchestrate all of it. I want to say a very sincere thank you to all of those people. And I want to encourage any of you out there who are in those kinds of service roles, thank you for what you did for Lillia, but what you're doing for anybody else who comes across your path. And for all of us out there who can just be a little bit more aware and a little bit more compassionate toward those around us and a little bit more observant to recognize something that doesn't quite feel right so we can make a difference and help the next person escape. We all need God. We all need His protection. We all need His guidance. And so I just want to close out this episode today by saying a very sincere thank you to Lillia for having the bravery and the courage not only to get out of your situation, but for being willing to share your story with us and for giving me the great honor to give you a platform and hear your story. I pray that it will affect many, many people and that it will help others become free as well. Thanks for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you back here next week for another episode at the Sunshine Cafe. God bless and have a great week.